You've dreamed of peace. But what if peace isn't what you think it is? What if it's not the absence of struggle, but the moment you stop needing to escape it? I remember how you begged the world to let up. Not out loud, not with fire, but with silence. You stopped asking for joy and started praying for neutrality. Just one day where the hill didn't rise against you. You weren't lazy, you were exhausted from meaninglessness, from the repetition, from the quiet war of waking up in a life that doesn't clap for you. And the worst part? No one saw you pushing. No one saw the weight, but you still rose. This letter is for you, the man who keeps rolling. Not because he believes in finish lines, but because he doesn't know how to stop moving. You think you're broken because the pain doesn't go away. You think there's something wrong with you because the mountain never gets smaller. But what if the point was never to make the mountain disappear? What if the mountain is sacred precisely because it stays? You've been taught that progress should look like elevation. That growth means leaving things behind. But sometimes the real growth is what you carry with you, what you choose to keep pushing, not out of fear but love. Some people say if you're still suffering, it means you haven't healed. I say if you're still pushing, it means you haven't surrendered to despair. You still believe somewhere under all the numbness that this matters. Not because it's glamorous, but because it's yours. I remember the day you hoped the boulder would crush you. Not to end your life, just to end the loop. I remember lying face down in the dirt, hoping something else would decide for me. But the stone didn't move, and neither did the mountain. The only thing that shifted was me. That's the day I stopped waiting to be saved. I stopped bargaining. I picked up the boulder, not for victory, but for rhythm. And that rhythm became breath. That breath became presence. And that presence became something I never expected to find again. Peace, not relief, not reward, but the peace that comes from knowing that even if the stone rolls again, I will meet it. Not as a victim, not as a hero, just as a man who knows his weight and carries it anyway. So I'll ask you again, what if peace isn't what you think it is? What if peace is this? The moment you reach for the stone, not because it's over, but because something in you still believes it's worth beginning again. And what if that belief, quiet, persistent, unseen, is the strongest thing you'll ever carry? They told you the myth like it was a sentence. A man condemned by the gods to roll a stone uphill forever. And every time he reached the top, the stone slipped. And every time it slipped, he started again. They called that suffering. But they forgot to mention the moment he stopped asking for escape. They forgot to tell you about the year the mountain stopped feeling like a punishment and started to feel like a path. You don't need to believe in gods to understand that myth. You just need to know what it's like to wake up in a life that repeats, to push without applause, to climb without climax, to feel yourself becoming a ritual no one asked for, but one you refuse to abandon. They say Sisyphus was cursed, but I think he was consecrated. Because after the 1000th push, something changed, not the stone, not the hill, him. That's the part they leave out, the part where he smiles. Not because the burden got lighter, but because he got heavier with meaning. You've been told the same lie they told me. That joy comes from reaching the top, that if the stone rolls back, it was all for nothing. But let me tell you about a man who never made it to the top. His name was Dashrath Manjhi. When his wife died because a mountain stood between her and the nearest hospital, he didn't curse the sky. He picked up a hammer, and for 22 years he carved a road through solid rock. His hands bled, his bones bent. And every day the mountain laughed, but he kept carving. And when the road was finished, people walked through the space his grief had made. They called him mad until they called him legend. And the thing is, he never made the climb for glory. He made it because he couldn't not. That's what you're starting to understand. You don't push the stone because you think it'll stay. You push because you are no longer willing to be the man who waits for it to move by itself. You've stopped chasing comfort. You've stopped demanding arrival. You've started becoming the kind of man the mountain no longer resists. And maybe one day someone will say the same about you, that the climb didn't change, but he did. That the stone never stayed, but he did. That the mountain tried to break him and failed. Because in the end, it wasn't the gods who condemned Sisyphus. It was Sisyphus who condemned the gods. He said, I will climb anyway. And that was the revolt. That was the beginning of freedom. Not when the stone stopped rolling, but when the man stopped needing it to stop. And that's where you are now. You're not waiting for the mountain to move. You are becoming someone who no longer needs it to. Because the climb itself has become a cathedral. And every push is a hymn. You are not cursed, you are being carved by your own hands in your own time. And the stone is just the chisel. There's a part of you that's already surrendered. But not in the way they warned you about. Not the kind of surrender that gives up. The kind that stops arguing with reality. At first it feels like nothing. You start begging the stone to stay. You stop screaming at the hill for being steep, you go quiet. But that silence, it doesn't hollow you out, it starts holding you. You've been told silence is emptiness, but maybe it's not, maybe it's a space. A sacred pause between collapse and choice. And maybe inside that pause is something stronger than hope. Rhythm. The rhythm of your breath. The rhythm of your hands learning the stone. The rhythm of rising not because it will be different, but because something in you still believes. That's the beginning of the Quiet Revolt. Not the rebellion that explodes, the rebellion that repeats. They won't understand it. Because the world loves big moments, loud change, final breakthroughs. But the real revolt is what you do when no one claps, when no one's looking, when the only thing pulling you forward is something you can't even name. There's a story you've never heard. In the prison camps of Changi, women stitch secret quilts. One square at a time, no thread to spare, no fabric to waste, but they stitched. Each square was a message, a breath, a heartbeat that said, I'm still here. That's what you've been doing. You've been stitching your life into something no one sees, but something that matters. Every morning you push the boulder, you add another square. Every quiet breath, another thread. And maybe no one will hang it in a gallery. Maybe no one will read your story out loud. But someone will rest under the shelter of what you built, and that's enough. Because you've stopped asking for the struggle to end. You've started asking what it wants to teach you. And in that shift from avoidance to rhythm, you've done something no one else can do for you. You've turned suffering into structure, pain into presence, repetition into ritual. You're not surviving anymore. You're dancing with the absurd. And that dance is not madness, it's not resignation. It's love in its most durable form. The kind that doesn't ask for a reward. The kind that just shows up. Again and again. You thought the breaking would be loud. Some final fracture. Some dramatic undoing, but it wasn't like that. It was soft. You didn't fall to your knees, you just stopped looking up. Stopped expecting it to get lighter, stopped needing it to. There's a moment in every climber's life where nothing changes except the shape of the silence. That's what happened to you. You didn't cry, you didn't scream. You just watched the stone roll down again. And something in you whispered, I don't know if I can keep doing this, but you did. And no one will write that on a plaque. No one will call it heroism, but it is. Some people stop pushing, some people never start again. And if you had, no one would have blamed you, but you didn't. You stayed, you climbed. And that's when the shift begins, not outside, inside. You begin to understand that maybe peace isn't the reward for finishing. Maybe it's the reward for not needing to. You begin to realize that the stone, the very thing that exhausted you, has carved something clean into your soul. Like a field that's only fertile because it burned. Like a reef that only exists because a ship once sank. Your collapse wasn't the end, it was the beginning of the soil. And in that soil, something sacred starts to grow. You're not who you were when the climb began. And you're not who you'll be when the next one comes. But right now, right here, you are the man who broke and kept moving. There's a woman who played piano in the camps. She had nothing, they took everything. But she played, every day. Notes no one could hear beyond the wire. Music that didn't change the war, but changed her. That's what this climb has done for you. The world may not change, but you have. The stone didn't break you. It broke the illusion of who you thought you needed to be. You no longer need to be rescued. You no longer need it to be easy. You no longer wait for light. Because somewhere in that silence, you became it. There's a kind of joy they don't write songs about. Not the joy of winning. Not the joy of being seen. The kind of joy that doesn't feel like joy at first. It feels like breath. It feels like rhythm. It feels like doing the same thing again and realizing you're not the same. You wake up, you push, the stone rolls, but now something's different. It's not lighter, you are stronger. It doesn't sting the same way anymore, does it? Because somewhere in the repetition, the resistance dissolved. Somewhere along the climb, the hill became familiar. The stone became a companion, the silence became music. And you became the kind of person who doesn't need the mountain to reward him. That's the moment it changes. Not when the world shifts, when you do. There's a temple in Japan, rebuilt every 20 years from the ground up. Same wood, same design, same ritual, not because it fails, but because they know rebuilding is the point. That's what this is. You're not fixing something broken. You're participating in something sacred. You are not stuck, you are returning. And with every return, your steps deepen. With every cycle, your hands remember something your mind forgot. That purpose is not linear. That progress is not a straight line to glory. That joy isn't what happens after the work. Joy is the work done with presence. You are not a machine. You are a monk, a sculptor, a ritual in motion. Like the monks of Mount He, running 1,000 marathons in silence. Not to escape their pain, but to meet it, to listen to it. To become worthy of it, that's who you've become. Someone who no longer fights the rhythm. Someone who doesn't measure the day by how far the stone moved, but by whether they showed up to meet it. You used to look for peace at the summit. Now you find it in the steps, in the breath, in the silence. In the knowing that repetition done with love becomes devotion. You don't need it to end. Because this rhythm, this path, this climb has become your cathedral. And every step, every push, every quiet gasp in the early light is a hymn that no one else hears but you. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. If you're still listening, this letter was always for you. The one who wakes up tired but moves anyway. The one who doesn't want applause, just a breath of meaning. The one who has been carrying something no one else sees. You are not alone. I know what it means to walk in silence, to wonder if you're going in circles, to ask yourself if persistence is noble or just foolish. But hear me, you are not lost because you keep returning. You are not weak because the weight hasn't changed. You're not broken because you haven't arrived. You are the man who keeps rolling his boulder. Not because someone told you to. Not because you expect reward, but because something in you refuses to let go of the climb. That something, that invisible tether, that ache, that whisper is not madness. It is your calling, and yes, it's absurd. It's absurd to rise again when nothing changes. It's absurd to keep moving when the hill erases your steps. It's absurd to love a struggle that gives nothing back. But it is in that absurdity that the sacred is found. There's a haiku from a long-dead samurai that says, "My barn burned down, now I can see the moon." You've watched your barn burn. The plans, the ideals, the certainty. But look, there is the sky. And in it something vast, something quiet. Something watching you with awe because you didn't quit, you didn't stop. You didn't let the stone define you. You made it your mirror. You became something no algorithm can track, no metric can measure. You became the one who returns without promise, who shows up without certainty, who climbs not because it will end, but because it means something to keep going. You became the man this world quietly depends on, the invisible backbone. The one who doesn't just survive pain, but gives it purpose. And if you're still climbing, still carrying, still moving forward when no one sees you, then this space, this letter, this voice was built for you. You're not alone, you never were. And if this moved you, share it with someone else who climbs in silence, someone else whose stone feels heavier than words, someone else who needs to hear, you are not broken, you're being shaped. And the boulder that you carry is not holding you back. It's carving you. So push, not for victory, not for praise. Push because this climb is holy. And because every step you take leaves a trail for someone else to follow when they've forgotten how.